As a case study, let's look at. Have I written a couple things about him? Yeah, it's hard to qualify how much your Sun reporter Brian Lilley is. This thing has had hundreds and hundreds of thousands of views, which is why I'm really excited about showing this to you today. Now, Brian Lilley, let's talk about him becoming one of the Sun's op-ed guys, right? Like a guy who is like, this is the news of the day. This is what is really going on. This is how people kind of have acted and reacted to newspapers. These guys, as you pointed out, the Toronto Sun is nothing more than a lobby agency for the Conservative Party of Canada and the Conservative Party in this province. That's it. Brian Lilley is not a journalist. If I'm not mistaken, he was like a bit-playing failed radio host in Ottawa that was hired, never really wrote before, was hired to be a journalist to regurgitate populist bullshit for people, right? Isn't that kind of the same thing?
Yeah, he's a guy out of Mohawk College who was doing hits for CJAD and CFRB back in the day. I worked in the press gallery with him. I was literally, a few feet away from him, listening to his like inane horseshit that he would come up with through the workday. He was really big into family values until he split his family and valued somebody else. An annoying, hypocritical wretch. Who was hired by the Sun, like you said, because he was a neutral agar, a medium through which the Conservative Party of Ontario could basically place its stuff in the paper. But the Toronto Sun is an inconsequential paper now. Nobody could possibly take it seriously, and all it does is reinforce the anger and evil of its own readership. But but in a way, that's the way papers were in the 30s. And to bring it back to McCullough, and I could go on about Lilley for a very long time. Thank God I practiced defamation law.
You probably could, just because it's not like the Sun's going to review your book. It's not like teenage nonfiction or teenage fiction. So that's about as high as they go, I think, for Sun readers.
You can say anything they want. The last time a Sun reader bought a book, I think it was Carved on a Rock. Christ, I wrote for the Sun in the late 70s. It was a riot to work there. Then there were a great big staff who went out and broke stories. There's like a handful of people. It's the irony of the Sun is that it exists because of the bailout. I am convinced that if there was no bailout per title, they'd have closed the Sun already, and just it has no readership, it has no ads. If I was to pull out my little trunk of old newspapers with my own stories in it and looked at the Sun of, in say 79, 80 when I worked there, the Sun paper would be like an ad flyer stuffed inside. It's just not, and it has no circulation. Like, back in McCullough's day, they would sell like 150. Not everybody, but people who had any money at all, like a job, would get the Star, the Telegram, the Globe every day, and there would maybe be 150,000 people out of 700,000 people living in Toronto buying these newspapers every day. Now, what does the Sun sell? Like maybe 80,000 copies in a city of 6 million. Yeah. This is just chump change. A guy like McCullough would have shut it down ages. Well, he would never have hired a guy like Lilley either. No. These are people who could never have got jobs. So you look at almost all the journalists on the Sun and quite a few of the other papers are people who, even in my day, in the 80s and 90s, would never have ever got into the pages of a newspaper. And a lot of these columnists that you see in Canadian newspapers aren't even being paid for their work. They're doing this because it's gives them credibility for some other like income stream that they have. I've offered to write for papers. They said, sure, it'd be great exposure. I'm like, I don't need any fucking exposure. I got
a paycheck.
Yeah. If it was worth money before, it's worth money now, and it's just pathetic, and maybe there is some other person who wants that, but